Alright, so we got some reworks mainly to Arcane, a little bit of stuff to Frost, and some stuff for Spellslinger and Sunfury. They reduced the meteorites from 8 to 4, probably because of, mob moving issues, and then they just balanced it so it's the same damage and cooldown reduction. Of course, it's still Fire Blast for Fire and Arcane Orb for Arcane, which is imbalanced, really. Fire Blast is way better. Arcane Orb really has no value for Arcane single target, but yeah. For Spellslinger, they basically just made everything that Arcane did generate 2 splinters. They nerfed the clear casting generation because this was absolutely insane. And then they changed this from Nether Tempest to Arcane Orb because Nether Tempest is being removed from the game. So we have this talent, which is pretty cool. I like this a lot, where in Lust, your Arcane Familiar fires 4 bolts instead of 1, and just in general, damage from your Arcane Familiar has a chance to give you 2% of your max mana. This means that you'll get a lot more guaranteed mana regen during your Lust effect, where you're spending the most mana, and just consistently throughout your rotation, you'll be getting a bit more mana back. We also have this, which doesn't really make sense, I guess, because it seems it's a throwaway talent, really. It's just buffing Arcane Explosion, because right now Arcane Missiles in this rework will only be able to be casted with clear casting. So this is kind of bad just because it's just a flat damage node. No choice about it, really, but that's alright. Part of this rework looks like they're aimed at just clearing out a bunch of buttons from Arcane. So this is them giving you an option to not play with Presence of Mind. But there's several really weird things about this. First of all, they already removed Nether Tempest and they removed Radiant Spark. And so Presence of Mind is a movement tool, and having a base cast time reduction of Arcane Blast on 10% or by 10% is really strong compared to just having Presence of Mind every 45 seconds. So you might just lose one of your tools to deal with movement so that you can have more flat damage, which is kind of annoying, really. And the other thing is, Arcane's cast time right now, by the way, if you're not aware, at 4 charges, it is the GCD. Okay, so if you take this, then your cast time Arcane Blast is similar to what happens when you go over 104% haste. It's just always going to be below the GCD. Apparently, I don't know anything about this, but apparently when they do things like that, sometimes they make it when you're casting the spell, your GCD is reduced, so you can keep casting it. So maybe that's what they'll do here. Or you'll just be casting another GCD, in which case that'd be really bad, and this choice node would be completely useless. So we'll see. Very weird change or choice here, but yeah. Now this is something I really, really, really don't like. So this is our current 2 set, except they made it actually stronger. Or is it stronger? I don't know. Anyway, it's our current 2 set. And it's also a 2-point talent. But yeah, this just stacks up to 4 times, gives you an 8% increased damage. This is really annoying to deal with during Mythic Plus, just because when you're moving from pack to pack, we just don't generate clear cast enough in AoE. Just spamming Explosion for like 5 to 10 seconds trying to get a clear cast so that you can keep this up. And it's not fun. It's not fun to do. So I don't like that this is returning, because this was not at all connected to our 4 set. And the reason this is returning in this tree is for our 4 set, because you can see when you have maximum stacks of this buff, your next Arcane Missiles consumes it to cleave. Also a bit weird that this consumes our damage buff, and then we have to restack it. It's very strange. This is a very strange interaction from the make. They did also make this talent. So essentially you need like 3 talent points to make your 4-piece function. I think that's strange. Where when you gain a stack, you have a small chance to gain another stack, and it can trigger off of itself. It says a small chance. Like, that's not, ideally we wouldn't be stacking this up too much, I guess. I guess you have to because it's being consumed, but it's just weird that this is an RNG small chance, because we're really not doing that many clear casting. So it would have to be a greater than small chance. I do think that this has a decent chance of happening. This could be fun in the fact that you would be able to just be kind of chain casting these cleaved Arcane Missiles if this thing procs a bunch. So that could be cool. But, as long as our clear casting is just, we need higher clear casting rate in AoE. Apparently, there's some theory crafting going on about it, mostly from Porum, of course, because he's the big Arcane guy, that they might make your AoE rotation actually cost you a little bit of mana so that you can start generating clear casting AoE. Like right now, Barrage costs no mana, so that's why we essentially spend almost no mana in AoE, because like nothing we do costs mana except for Arcane Explosion. We're barely doing that, so yeah, we'll see about that. And then we have this, which is again another passive damage bonus thing, which is kind of boring. Another precision damage bonus increased to 30%. Okay, whatever. We have this. Every 6 times you consume nether precision, your next Arcane Blast echoes, repeats damage at 50% effectiveness to the primary target and up to 2 nearby enemies. So this is obviously, you know, potentially good in cleave. And it does repeat its damage up to the primary target as well, so it seems like something you'll just take always in single target too. But the bigger thing is that now nether precision works with Arcane Barrage, which is down here, if you're curious, where it increases the damage of your Arcane Blast or Arcane Barrage. So you might just be casting Arcane Blast and like low target cleave just for this little damage thing, which is a little neat. You know, it's something that adds another element to Arcane's AoE rotation, which is right now rather simple, just press Barrage. They also made a choice node here where you can either have Touch the Magi, a stronger Touch the Magi, or Touch the Magi, which is similar to Radiant Spark, except instead of having like this weird stacking thing where you have to choose what spells you're doing into it, it just increases the damage of Arcane Barrage, Blast, and Missiles, and then after all 3 are hit it, then it explodes. So it's essentially Radiant Spark, but a lot simpler, where you just barrage into Touch the Magi, and then Arcane Blast, and then Missiles. This is potentially kind of weird for AoE, right? Because only Arcane Barrage is AoE here, unless you're doing the Ley Drinker thing. So yeah, that might be strange, but we'll see. I think this is kind of cool. It's a nice little thing they did. Incentivizes you to use all your spells during your burst, which you kind of were already doing, but yeah. And you can also choose when it explodes, right? Because it doesn't explode until after you do this. So you might be able to just delay it slightly if you really want to. Like in single target, you could do this and then just not barrage or something until later. But yeah. Not really a fan of this, where when it's Magi Spark or Improved Touch of Magi detonates, increases all damage to the affected targets taken from you by 8%. I didn't actually read this before. It says when Magi Spark detonates. I don't know if this like... Actually, I'm not really sure how this works, because there's 2 ways this works. Either this replaces Touch of Magi, or it's a second effect with it. Because if it's a second effect, right, and the Spark explodes when you do all these damage effects, then you get the 8% damage buff during your Touch the Magi. If this replaces Touch the Magi, that would just make your Touch the Magi explode early, which is kind of weird. So we'll have to see how that works, because this kind of sounds like it's a separate effect. But if it's a separate effect, then you would get an 8% damage amp during your Touch the Magi, which is way better than getting it afterwards. Definitely not a fan of having it after you. So a lot of people kind of complain about like Arcane's ramp up these days, and this would just give you an even longer burst window, right? Where you have 24 seconds through 12 seconds of Magi, and then your 12 seconds after with the 8% damage buff. So yeah. They just made Arcane Missiles only castable while you have clear casting, which is fine. People were kind of asking for it. Just makes it easier to balance, really. You don't have to worry about spamming it. I know some people will probably be sad about this because of the Shaolin's playstyle where you're just spamming missiles all the time, but yeah. Nice Harmony does still exist, so this might affect Harmony's balancing, really. But yeah. And then, like I said, this is just, now you can use Barrage on Nether Precision, which is great for Spellslinger's design because that requires you to consume Nether Precision. They made Arcane Familiar passive, so you don't need to press it, just Arcane Intelligence does it for you. They changed this. They said redesigned. The only thing they added was that spells that consume clear casting deal 5% more damage. This is really bad, but you know, buffs Arcane Missiles, so maybe that will be good for the Cleave Missiles. They made Concentration have a small chance to make your next cast of Arcane Blast free. This is essentially what Rule 3 should be now, because we don't have that much. We're not dropping charges at all much. We're just spamming Arcane Blast. So this is essentially like a modern Rule of 3s, I guess. It doesn't seem very good because this is in the 3rd gate, but we'll see what the percent chance on that is. They made Improved Prismatic Barrier baseline. This is insane. This is what, a 20% magic damage reduction, or 25% magic damage reduction, and a 40% duration reduction to any magic DOS applied to you. This is insane. Arcane, disgusting. And this will apply to your Mass Barrier too, right? So Arcane, very strong defensively and very strong group CD with Mass Barrier, which hasn't really changed. Like if you're looking at things like Throne of Thunder or Throne of the Tides from last season, Arcane, if you played Improved Prismatic Barrier on the third boss, could just like, that was a group CD that would keep your whole team alive if you just press Mass Barrier, right? If you're doing High Tyrannical, the Flame Shocks would essentially one-shot anyone, unless they're pre-defensive. So this is pretty good. Changed a lot of positions of talents, moved some things to the first gate. They changed Rule 3 so it's no longer a choice node. No one's going to take it anyway, so that's okay. And they removed these talents. Foresight, no one uses it. Nether Tempest, I think a lot of people want that removed. Reverberate, we're going to come back to. Mana Gem, that's fine. We are going to have less mana rotation because of this, but we're also not going to have Temporal Warp, so we're not going to have as many mana concerns, especially on Opener. Radiant Spark, Harmonic Echo, and Cascading Power, right? That's fine. Reverberate, I'm not really a fan of them removing this because the only way we have to generate 2 stacks of clear casting now is the second Arcane Explosion we get when we use Arcane Echo or Arcane Explosion when we have clear casting. So it's going to be a lot more Arcane Explosion spamming if you have like Famine of Orb Barrage procs. So I'm not a fan of that because it's going to make not getting Orb Barrage procs feel a lot worse, and getting Orb Barrage procs is going to be way stronger because the alternative is a lot more time generating charges. So yeah, we'll see how that works out, but not a fan of that. They just did this thing. I guess I didn't even know this was a stacking thing for fire, but they're just trying to balance Ignite, I suppose. Here's the Frost stuff. So they're bringing back the Deathborne playstyle in a bit of a poor way, really. Sorry, but let's talk about it. So when Icy Veins is active, damaging an enemy with Frostbolt increases spell damage by 1%. And then while Icy Veins is active, your Frostbolts hit up to 2 additional targets, and that's a 1-point talent now. So this is literally Deathborne, except Deathborne was unconnected to Icy Veins, where here you just press Icy Veins and you just spam Frostbolt essentially, and you get a massive stacking damage buff. This doesn't really work as well anymore because Frostbolt does literally 0 damage essentially, and we have like Glacial Spike is insanely easy to access because it's just 1 point away from Hailstones, which you're always taking. The big thing is they made Fractured Frost 1 point and they made Hailstones 1 point. So Hailstones is actually is 2 points right now, and since we always take it, that means we would have 1 point extra in the tree, by the way, at the moment. So you're forced essentially to take 1 extra thing than you were taking before. Yeah. If I make my way down the tree, what you're going to see is what's going to happen is they're essentially trying to change what our load target cleave choice is, which is a bit strange, but so this is our current single target setup, right? This is going to be 1 point, which means we have another point we can take in single target. Most of the time, that probably means you're just going to take Chain Reaction too, because Glacial Spike's really strong. But they moved this talent right here and this talent right here. So I guess you can't take Freezing Winds. This is really weird. Actually, no, you can because we have Glacial Assault. Okay. Yeah. So it kind of seems like when they swapped Fractured Frost and Freezing Winds and then swapped Cold Front and Cold Snap, that they were trying to make it so since right here you just need 1 point to take Cold Snap, and then you would have a fully functioning like AoE setup. This is what we do in a lot of raid fights. We just do that. So I thought they were trying to reverse this, where you would instead take Fractured Frost and Death's Chill, but you can still access this through Glacial Assault, and you don't have any additional point investment. So it kind of seems like nothing changes, or nothing has changed. We actually don't know where Death's Chill is, but if I had imagined it would just be like, right here or something under Thermal Void. However, if this is really easily accessible, you might take it even without Fractured Frost, like over, say, Chain Reaction. We would instead take Death's Chill. But again, that's a little strange because we don't really cast any Frostbolts right now. So this is weird. Also, this is a pretty bad playstyle, really. It's not a fun one, right? Nothing in here is supported for Frostbolts, right? The only Frostbolt talents we really have is Cold Front, right? So you have Fractured Frost, you have Cold Front, and you have Death's Chill to interact with each other. And you have Slick Ice, really. But then this talent's useless, that talent's useless, that's useless, that's useless, that's useless. Like, so many of these talents just don't work. Even in like the third gate, they just don't work at all with Frostbolt. And if they're trying to present in a different playstyle, we still need single target damage, and this is only cleaving to 3 targets. It's not very strong. You're doing Mythic Plus, and there's like 10 targets in front of you. Do you really want to be spamming Frostbolt just to try and send out an orb? Because this thing's entire balance depends on you just sending out more frozen orbs than you already have. I don't know. It's weird. Also, Cold Front doesn't work with Freezing Rain the last I checked, which was admittedly pre-rework, I think. But yeah, so the orb you generate here doesn't give you Freezing Rain. It used to give you Freezing Winds, but they've since reworked how Freezing Winds worked. So I don't know if that will still be true. And you don't even want Freezing Winds if you're playing Cold Front, because you want to keep spamming your Frostbolts with Fractured Frost. And I also dislike, this is the same problem that Deathborne has, where this is only during a CD. Like, there's no way for you to consistently do this. Frost is about consistency. I would much prefer that this had a secondary effect where there's like a buff you get. I mean, I always talk about this for Fractured Frost, but like Inexorable Assault, right? Where there'd be a buff you get when you're outside of Icy Veins that you can consume a stack of like every 5 seconds. You get one and it stacks up to 4 times, and that would cause your Frostbolts to cleave. And then while you're in Icy Veins, all your Frostbolts cleave. But outside of Icy Veins, you still have a little bit of cleave that helps you stack up your Cold Front a lot more. Because that would be a lot more satisfying than just saying, hey, whenever in Icy Veins, spam Frostbolt for the next 3 minutes. Having one where it's like you have to weave Frostbolt into your rotation every, 5-6 seconds, or not even that, right? Because they stack up, is a lot nicer than saying, hey, I'm at 25 stacks of Cold Front and I just entered a pack with 12 mobs. Let me spam Frostbolt 5 times until I spawn my orb, right? In that case, you'd only need to press it like 2 times and it would cleave. So it would look satisfying. It would feel satisfying. And it would also be satisfying in the way that Frostfire has the Frostfire Empowerment procs that cause your next Frostfire Bolt to do AoE damage and crit, and you could just hold a stack and guarantee that cleaves, right, in your AoE rotation. So that would be a satisfying gameplay loop, and it's something that you could, if it's strong enough, and we don't need to take Glacial Spike, reasonably take. But again, Glacial Spike is literally a 1-point investment, and it is very, very, very strong. So, they need something. They need really a choice node with Glacial Spike if they want to make a non-Glacial Spike playstyle functional, I guess, is my opinion. But it's also rather strange for you to take an Ice Lance generates an Ice Skull talent and then never press it because you're trying to spam Frostbolt. So they were trying to really just put in the Deathborne playstyle without innovating on it at all. And the Deathborne playstyle was honestly a bit boring, but could be interesting with further development, as long as you just, you can't have a spec based around pressing just your main filler spell. It's not very good, and Frostbolt's very weak. So anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. Obviously, I just ranted quite a lot, but I hope you got some good things out of that. I mean, Arcane's looking interesting at least. They fixed a lot of people's concerns with it, even though it was not a particularly complex spec. It just had a lot of initial learning to it. They've massively reduced the amount of initial learning that you need for it. So I'm sure that'll make a lot more people try it, which is good because right now it's the least played mage spec. So yeah, and if they iterate on this Frost stuff, I can see it being interesting, but not if they keep this entirely cooldown based, and not if they limit it entirely to Frostbolt with no real competitive, nodes with Glacial Spike. Which I'm personally a big pro Glacial Spike person, and also change our routes to apply Winter's Chill, but only against 3 targets. So yeah. All right. Have a good day.